participants joining us. So why don't you go ahead and get started?
All right. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for on this Friday morning for our Housing Development Forum. I know that all of you are experiencing this very crazy thing we call our housing market, and we know that one of the most difficult things that we are facing is a severe lack of inventory, and we all have lots of clients, but we have not much to sell to them. So thank you, so that despite your insane schedules, that you're taking time to come here to be educated, to better serve your clients and to better meet the needs of your clients. And I'm glad that you're here to hear the really important messages that we're going to receive from our developers that are on our panel today. I know you're all excited to hear from our panelists, but before we get started, I just wanted to give a brief announcement on something that's new and coming up. So back in during the winter GMM, when we were raising money for the teachers, I began to notice people putting in the chat that they, the good things that they were doing in the neighborhood, charity doing. And I felt like this was something that we needed to start spotlighting in our community so that people in the islands understand what we do. And so this year, I'm proud to announce that we are going to have our first ever Honolulu Board of Realtors Good Neighbor Award. So it is modeled after the National Association Good Neighbor Award. And so this year at our summer GMM, we will be awarding 3 winners. And with those 3 winners, they will receive a monetary award for their charity, whether it's their own charity or whether it's a charity that they work for. So if you are an agent or you know an agent that is doing good in their neighborhood, I please encourage you to apply. We have a short deadline for our applications. It is April 30th. So we need you to get online and do that as quickly as possible. And as an incentive to get you going, we are going to be putting, with each application that you put in for you or someone else, we will be putting your name in a drawing for a $25 gas card. And we will be drawing on a weekly basis until the end of the deadline. So I would just encourage you that if you know someone or yourself that's doing something important in our community, that we want to bring that to people's attention. We know that people are struggling, and we want people to be aware that we see them, and not only do we see them, but we want to help them. And we want to bring attention to that we're not just people that sell houses, but we genuinely care about the people in our communities. So please put in those applications. So to start us off, I wanted to thank our diamond sponsor, Jack Smythe. Jack is the Vice President and Executive Loan Officer from Bank of Hawaii. And Jack, I know that you are probably as crazy as we are, but please just share what's going on with you in Bank of Hawaii.
Hey, thank you so much, Shannon. And hello, everybody out there. Happy Aloha Friday. Yeah, what a great idea, by the way, that Good Neighbor Award that you're talking about. That's amazing. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm standing in for our good friend Carol Marks today, who is actually visiting her daughters on spring break in Montana, of all places. But yeah, I'm really happy to be here. And wow, what an amazing group of panelists you guys have coming up today. Very impressive. And you know, Bank of Hawaii, we're heavily involved in the developer community. We actually finance a lot of these projects, not only the vertical construction to build, but also the takeout financing for all of our buyers to get into housing, and we provide mortgages. And you know, as Shannon was referencing, I mean, yeah, look at this crazy market we're in. You know, multiple offers, bidding wars. So housing is definitely needed, and this group of panelists are part of the solution for us. So thank you so much for having me on. A few things about Bank of Hawaii. You know, we are here for you guys. We are the #1 local lender here in the state of Hawaii. You know, we issue pre-qual letters, and they're solid. We do not sell our loans to other servicers. We service all the loans we make, which our customers really like. We are offering a half-point discount on all purchase transactions right now. And actually, it even applies to new money to the bank. So any outside refinances coming in. And that can, you know, it can translate to a savings of $500 on a 100,000 loan amount, or, you know, $5,000 on a $1 million loan amount. so it's a great deal. Otherwise, we're here for you guys. We have our convenient branch network everywhere. All of us loan officers at the bank working from home still, as you can see. But yeah, we've never been busier, and as you guys are all quite busy right now with this, crazy, amazing housing market we're in, and these low rates. I mean, I've never seen them lower in all the time I've been doing this. But anyway, thanks again. I just want to keep it kind of short because I'm excited to hear from all of our panelists as you guys are. And again, Jack Smythe with Bank of Hawaii. I'll put my contact info here in the chat screen. If anybody has any questions for me at any time, please reach out. And thanks again, you guys. Have a good Friday.
Thank you, Jack. And yes, I agree. We're like in the perfect storm right now, lack of inventory, low interest rates. So, and a special thank you to Bank of Hawaii. You have continually just really served our members and served our community. And so thank you for that. Before we begin, I just wanted to recognize our amazing City Affairs Committee. And I think we have a picture of them that we're going to put up so you can see their faces. We just want to say a special thank you to them for the amount of time that they put in advocating for our homeowners, our buyers, our renters, and just in our industry in general. They really do incredible work fighting for our property rights. And so they're kind of a behind the scenes. We don't always see them, but boy, the decisions and the fights that they do really impact our industry. So thank you to them. And I wanted to just say that is my pleasure. And I want to do a special shout out to their fearless leader of that group. It amazes me how much information she knows. I've learned so much from her and what she does and just the amount of knowledge that she provides to our members. So I just want to say a special thank you and a special welcome to the chair of our City Affairs Committee, Jennifer Andrews, and I'll send it to you, Jen.
Thank you, Shannon, and thank you to you as being our 2021 Honolulu Board of Realtors president. That's a huge take and huge role, so thank you for your dedication to our membership. And thank you to our fearless CEO, Suzanne Young, who I don't know how much she can, I don't know how she can retain all the information she does. I mean, it's so much more than I can even fathom. So thank you, Suzanne, and to the HBR staff for always being so supportive, not just to our committee, but to our membership. So thank you, everyone. And good morning and welcome to our special presentation. This is a huge opportunity for us. So we appreciate everyone who's taking the time today to join us. We have 4 fabulous panelists today who's going to be speaking about housing opportunities and developments in Hawaii. And our first guest speaker is none other than the Director of the Department of Planning and Permitting, Dean Uchida. Dean is the person who will now be heading one of the largest county agencies and is very involved in the building industry, not only as the director of DPP, but Dean has also been in the industry for many, many years. He was also a past president of the Building Industry Association of Hawaii. So we are very honored to have him to speak to our membership today about his role as the new DPP director. So welcome, Dean. And again, thank you for being here to speak with our members.
Thanks, Jennifer. Nice to see you again. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the invitation to speak to your all your realtors out there. Mayor Blangiardi, has a priority. He had a priority during the campaign, and as mayor, his direction to me was fix the building permit process at DPP. So that's the #1 thing we're working on right now. We've engaged a consultant to come up with a price for some of the software packages we're getting. Those of you that are familiar with DPP's permit process, we have a POSSE system, they call it. And it was just converted to a web-based system, I think last year sometime. But the vendor, Computronics, excuse me, also offers different modules now. We've had this system in place since 1998 when DPP was first created. And the different modules are based on work they've been doing in other municipalities around the United States. So they have like an E-plans module, they have a permitting module, They have an inspection module. So we're looking at all of those different modules to add on to the platform we have and basically modernize the whole permit process at DPP. We're in the midst of trying to figure out exactly how the system would work. We're going to do some beta tests of some of the software. We also want to upgrade the technology that the employees have at DPP. If we're going to go all electronic, the plan reviewers need to have like bigger screens to look at the plans. Our inspectors need to have smartphones so they can do field inspections and be able to communicate back to the computer in our office, in our building. So we're trying to upgrade everybody at the same time. Once we have the system in place, our plan is to kind of reach out to the community to educate all the users about how the system would work, what the expectations are when you get on the system, and kind of make it a training and a transparent process so that everybody knows how the system is working. You can see a permit and where it is in the process. There'll be real-time comments coming from different agencies as well as from internally within DPP. So that's kind of underway right now. The other thing that the mayor wants to do is just increase housing at all price points. And we've been working closely with some of the master plan developers trying to expedite their construction, get them building more houses faster, to take advantage of, like what Jack was saying, the historically low interest rates, and give the families here an opportunity to get into a new home. So that's underway right now, and trying to untangle the permitting process. It's been quite a challenge. I've been here only about a little over 2 months, and the years of just overlaying different kind of codes and requirements. The permit process is quite complex right now, so we're trying to sort through that and find out ways that we can simplify it, one way or the other. I was given some questions that I guess you guys want answers from. So let me just go down this question. I think there's like 4 or 5 more, but first question is, what is the process to apply for a building permit? Well, first thing is you should get your plans prepared by a licensed architect or engineer. That'll save a lot of time, and you can do it electronically, submit it electronically. And what the department does is they review your plans, they send it out to other agencies like Board of Water Supply, ETS, Environmental Services, just to check for sewer capacity, to check for code. We check for code compliance. Board of Water checks for make sure that there's enough water to service whatever project it is that's being built. And so there's an internal review to check for code compliance. Once sometimes there's a back and forth where we're making comments and then the applicant has to resubmit, address the comments. And once the comments are done, then the building permit is issued. It's a ministerial permit. So as long as you're following the code and everything, you should be getting the permit. And we are working internally to try and make that process a little bit faster. Let's see. So what is the average time frame and cost for a permit? Well, the cost is based on the estimated construction cost. So, it kind of varies. The time frame really varies because of, depending on the type of project you have. Infill projects might be a little bit more time consuming because of the complications dealing with all the different existing infrastructure on a property. But generally, we try and get the permits out as quickly as possible. And with the big boom, we've had some challenges with COVID. We don't have any meetings anymore with the public, so everybody brings plans in and they just drop them off at the counter. And so sometimes people bring in like 10 building permits at one time. So the staff is kind of like overwhelmed during certain parts of the day. But we're trying to work through that as quickly as possible. What are some of the hurdles that DPP sees impacting housing development? Well, the biggest hurdle we have, throughout the state is we don't have developable land, meaning lands that are zoned urban that are suitable for development. You see the master plan communities like Coal Ridge and Port Pili, and that's about it as far as available land. So what we're looking at is trying to incentivize, more redevelopment infill area within the urban core. But that takes different kind of legislation and different kind of challenges. But I think that's going to be an opportunity that this administration is going to try and explore, see how we can incentivize more redevelopment of different sections of the city to allow for more affordable housing projects to come in. Any thoughts on improvements? What I want to do is I want to try and get more building permits online as possible. Right now you can get a fence permit, window, some minor electrical things, but I think if we can, somehow get like minor renovations online, that's an area that I'm trying to see where we can expand the online permitting to make it easier for people to do remodeling, make it easier for people to do renovations. So that's in the works right now. Let's see. Helpful tips for homeowners who are applying for permits. Like I said at the beginning, hire a licensed architect engineers and hire a licensed contractor. And generally you get what you pay for. So, that's the best advice I can give anybody at this point. One thing I forgot to mention, with the modernization that we're having at EPP, I also want to do a reorganization of the department. The department was created in 1998 when they combined like the building department, land utilization and planning. And what they did is we have these silos now with building, permitting, planning, land use planning, and there's no cross communication, very little. So what I want to do is try and allow for more of that, so that there's a more collaborative working together within the department, and maybe change some of the way how we handle things. One of the ideas I'm looking at is, instead of having intake clerks, taking the permits in when you file, if it's going to be electronic, maybe we just have engineers or professionals. The first people to look at the plans would be the guys reviewing the plans. So that's kind of in the works, the direction I want to take the department in going forward. But that's about all I got to say right now. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, but I really appreciate the opportunity that the Board of Realtors are giving Blanche Yard administration to kind of talk about what we're trying to do at DPP. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Director Uchida. So again, we appreciate your time and being here to meet virtually with our members. I know you've been extremely busy taking on this new role, and we're excited to see, the changes that you'll be implementing to help with the processes. Having known that you have a background in understanding how the building industry works, I think is going to be a tremendous benefit for everyone, not just, individuals, but overall for the housing industry. So thank you for being willing to take on the role as the director of, again, one of the largest agencies for one of the top 3 industries within our economy. So thank you again.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
So
Jenna, I think we have a question in the chat from Kim Shimonishi. Can you clarify when a building permit is required? And that's a very broad question, but maybe if you can put some parameters around it, that would be helpful.
I think if you look in the ordinance, the list that I think you need to, like, for a wall that exceeds certain height, fences that exceed certain heights. There's certain things that you don't need a permit for. I don't know them off the top of my head, but if you look in our ordinances, there's a whole list of different things that you don't need building permits for. And then there's a whole list of things that you do need a building permit for. So I haven't been here long enough to memorize them all. So sorry about that.
I think that's helpful to know that there is a section that references when you do and when you don't. So after this, everyone, we will work to get that information so we can post it.
Yeah, you might go to the DPP website. I think a lot of information is on the DPP website. So.
Sure. Members, this is your time. We are privileged to have Director Uchida with us. So if you have questions, let me ask a question that came up last week. We had a meeting with our North Shore regional group. And so one of the issues that they raised was about cesspools. And so maybe the need to upgrade from a cesspool to a septic tank, if you go in for minor renovations, is it going to require you to do the upgrade to the septic?
I don't know that specific, but I would think that, I think there's a deadline when all the cesspools have to be converted. So I would suggest the sooner you can do it, the better, because I think that's an EPA law.
Okay, thank you. I want to just comment on what you said about, you know, for housing development, the shortage of land that we have available, but the commitment, I think, from the new administration to help facilitate adding additional housing, just I think knowing that that is a priority is helpful to all of us. And I think that one of the things that our organization and why we really wanted to have this forum is realtors are experts in knowing what consumers need, whether they're a seller selling or a buyer looking, and then the need to do renovations or what they can do with the home that they've bought. And so we are here as a resource for you. We've got statistics, we've got experts, and so I just put that offer out to you whenever you're working through anything to reach out to us, and we can help provide information, resources, and just kind of what it's like on the ground with the consumers that our agents represent.
Well, I appreciate that. We'll probably be reaching out to you because I think a lot of the things that we need to do require legislation, city council approval. We want to try and be more proactive in trying to get more housing built and be reactive to when developers have individual requirements. So it's kind of a different approach. You know, let's test it, see what it's like. But if we can get, you know, representatives from your industry to support those type of initiatives, that would be really appreciated.
So thank you so much, Suzanne, for bringing up those questions. I know I've got a few more minutes with Director Uchida. And again, I know that with the various panelists right now who are in development, can you share a little bit more, Director, as to what other offices within both the county and state agencies that DPP would work with in terms of providing more opportunities to build on land? Since on the state level, we have various land classifications and zones. And part of that is how do we possibly redesignate certain areas for development? And because there's that top tier on the state, and then you've got the county level, you know, which then decides, you know, if there's opportunities to approve of special changes for developments. Is there any, can you share with us more about the more broad picture in terms, so members understand that, you know, there's many people involved, many agencies involved, and that's part of the whole process and reason why we are having this discussion.
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Jennifer. And people don't understand how complicated the land use system is in Hawaii. It's an overlapping system with the state controlling land use classifications from urban, conservation, agricultural, and rural. And so you need to, in order to take agricultural lands in any area and urbanize it, you first have to go to a state land use commission, and they have to reclassify it to urban. Once it's urban, it comes to the counties, whatever county you're in, and then you got to get the zoning on, be it residential, apartment, BMX. So that's a whole different process. So it's a kind of two-step process that happens. And, you know, it's quite, there's a lot of litigation involved. I mean, you know, I saw Harry come on, Councilman Cook can show you the scars of going through land use commission and zoning. But that's kind of why, you know, we have the lack of developable lands around Hawaii because of that system. So what we're working on at the city is just the urban lands, you know, and that's challenging in and of itself.
Yeah, we also agree that agriculture right now, especially agricultural lands, is a very hot and sensitive topic. I think more so in the most recent years. And again, Mr. Saunders from Castle and Cook, I'm sure will share his experiences with that. We do have a question from one of our members, if I can ask you. So we have a question. It says I understand there are homeowners in Royal Cunha whose properties border promised development of a golf course there, which is now being offered for farming. Are you aware of that situation and any thoughts? So again, I'm not sure if you can see it in the Q&A panel or Q&A button, Director. But again, the question is, there are homeowners in Royal Cunha whose properties border promised development of a golf course there, which is now being offered for farming. Are you aware of that situation and any thoughts?
Yeah, we're aware of the situation. That's kind of a complicated problem because the golf course area is kind of in the middle of one of the first phase of Royal Cunha. And you have lots that abut the property. The golf course lot was sold to someone and they CPR'd the property and sold it off to these different people, promising them farming opportunities, which just created a whole bunch of problems out there. There's no legal access to that golf course lot, which makes it even more problematic. But we're kind of trying to sort through that thing with the council people in the area and trying to get them a bit more organized around what the condominium owners can and cannot do on the property.
Thank you, Director. We actually got a couple more questions if you have a little bit more time. One of the questions is, how are, I'm assuming they're referencing DPP, going to deal with monster homes that are illegally approved?
Illegally approved. I'm not sure I understand the question.
So I guess the question is,
maybe it's not so much illegally approved, but maybe it's approved, but what they're doing with it is illegal. I think we have some concerns. I've seen a couple of questions come in about monster homes. So maybe just in general, if you can talk to the topic of monster homes.
Sure. I think they passed an ordinance recently that kind of limits the size of homes and hopefully will eliminate the monster homes from being constructed going forward. Unfortunately, what it did is it impacted a lot of local families who are trying to do multi-generational housing, which is quite common in Hawaii given the lack of housing. So in trying to solve one problem, they've kind of created problems for local families trying to house their own relatives. But going forward, part of the problem with the monster houses, it's kind of like an apartment in a residential district. I think that's the biggest thing that people are concerned about. And from an enforcement standpoint, it's a civil issue. So it's not criminal, so we cannot just start arresting people. And then making a case to show that it's an apartment building versus a house. It takes a lot of time and effort, and most of the renters don't cooperate with our inspectors. So it's a problem that we're trying to address, but the tools we have available, aren't very helpful from an enforcement standpoint. But it's something that we're concerned about, and we haven't quite figured out how to go about enforcing it right now. But hopefully we'll make some improvements going forward.
Thank you, Director. Wow, we're getting a lot of questions, so we may end up needing to follow up with you with a Q&A list, if you don't mind. Our next question is, when representing a buyer or seller involving properties that have unpermitted elements, what would you advise?
Try and get them permitted or remove them so you don't have a violation. Because it'll hurt the buyer if you don't resolve it up front, because when they come in for their building permit, if they want to do anything on that property, they're going to have to address it. So taking care of it at the time of transaction might be in the best interest of both parties. But yeah, I mean, if you guys have questions, you can write them down and send them in to me, and I'll try to get responses back to you as soon as I can.
Thank you so much. And I have to say, I reach out quite often to DPP. I know they're, the folks that are extremely busy, and I have found them to be quite responsive and very helpful. So I feel like, there is sometimes a misconception that DPP is not willing to assist, questions. But, their job gets easier if the public knows, what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done. And in terms of working with various types of contractors, we often find that even through the contractors, they'll use third-party permit expediters. And these I understand are approved third-party permits. Could you explain to our membership what a third-party permit expediter is and what their role is in terms of like the intermediary between the contractor and DPP?
Yeah, third party, basically, they do the code compliance check on the building permit before it's submitted. So in theory, once a third party does the code compliance, we should only be looking at the land use stuff, the discretionary aspects of a building permit. It's supposed to make the permit process a lot faster. Just because you're having a third party, confirm the fact that the plans are meeting the code, whether electrical, mechanical, structural. So the third party people are certified in one or more of those areas as far as their experience goes. And I think they have to annual or biannually renew their license to be a third party review. But that was in an attempt to try and make the permit process go faster. But if we're successful in modernizing and reorganize, hopefully there won't be a need for that type of assistance, and the system itself will be able to get the permits going in a reasonable time frame.
One of the biggest things that, and it was brought up earlier as far as questions of what would require a permit and what doesn't, and also the overall general process of having to obtain a permit. I think the community, both the realtor community and the public, are trying to find out, like, where can I learn about what needs, what do I need to do to get a permit, other than just what requires a permit. Do you have any plans in place or in your assessment of where you want to move forward with DPP, how you can do outreach or provide access to educational programs for the public? And again, I want to just put on a side note that through HBR, we definitely want to help with the outreach and the education. So does DPP have any plans right now and to continue to broaden their outreach for training opportunities to the public?
Yes. For sure, especially with the modernization effort. We're talking about a whole new system. So we are going to have outreach to especially the design professionals, architect, engineers, so that they understand, how the system is going to work, and they understand how to use the system so they can file the building permits. At the same time, we're going to do outreach to groups like yourself and other interested organizations from around the community about how the system is going to work. So you guys can kind of spread the word about what's going on at DPP. Yeah, I want to make it as inclusive as possible to make the launch as seamlessly as possible. I don't want to, do things without getting input from everybody. So you can count on us reaching out when we start doing the beta testing of the system, and even when we roll it out. So.
Fantastic. And so we'll go ahead and I'm going to ask one question before we we let you off the hot seat. So thank you so much for answering all our questions and being open to answer more questions that we weren't able to get to. And again, thank you to the members for participating with the questions. Is there anything that DPP would like from HBR in terms of getting information, what we can do to help you with updating your processes and the training opportunities? So is there anything that you think that the DPP would like to hear about from the members?
I guess feedback on, once we roll the system out, what are your clients? Are you having problems? I want to get, if something is going wrong, I want to try and address it quickly before it becomes a bigger problem. So just an open dialogue of communication with, the realtors and us would be something that would really help us.
And we greatly appreciate that. Just as our CEO Suzanne Young had said, it's all about we all coming together because, we're all in the housing industry, and having that open communication is definitely going to be able to improve, the process for everyone. So thank you for being so open with your time and open to having the HBR participate in these discussions. And we definitely look forward to working with you.
Hey, Jen, can I ask one more question? This is related. We've got a couple of people asking about the vacation rentals, and can you just give us an update on what is going on with the enforcement plans and opening up the B&B applications? And then we'll let you go.
Oh, give me the easy one, right? Okay. We're actually taking a closer look at that, and we might delay the rollout of the rules. We've had a lot more discussion recently about, what it is we're trying to do with the rules and what it is we're trying to enforce out there and how we're going to enforce it. So I think we're just going to take a pause and take a closer look at this thing to make sure that we're not creating more problems for ourselves down the road. But whatever decision comes out, we'll make it public and we'll give people some, reason why we're doing what we're doing. And as we go forward, we'll try and get information out to the public as quickly as possible. But I think right now, we just kind of want to take a closer look at some of the things being proposed and come up with maybe with a better product.
Thank you so much, Director Uchida, for being here. And again, we will go ahead and compile the list of questions that we weren't able to address today, and then follow up with our organization and members with your responses. So thank you again for being here. And of course, you're welcome to stay on, and listen in. And again, we appreciate your time and congratulations in your new position as director.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jennifer. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
See you guys.
Well, that was fantastic, and we really appreciate the director for being here. And again, for those who still have questions, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A so that we can compile a list for the director and get that back out to the membership. Our next guest speaker is someone that we truly appreciate for being engaged not only in the industry, but with the Honolulu Board of Realtors. Our next guest speaker is also our moderator. I would like to give a warm welcome and introduction to Mr. Dave Arakawa, Director of LURF, the Land Use Research Foundation. Dave has been in the industry many years as well. LURF represents many of the large developers here in Hawaii, and so he has a very in-depth knowledge of the processes and is going to be able to help us with the moderation of the fantastic panelists that we have, who are also our large developers in Hawaii. And I'll have Dave give the opportunity to introduce the guest speakers. So Dave, thank you for being here. Thank you for helping put this together. It's huge. So I will allow you to say anything else you'd like to share about LURF and yourself and introduce the panelists.
Okay. Jennifer, can you folks hear me?
Yes.
Hey, okay. All right. I'm not sure. I'm on both devices, so we'll just go from here. My name is Dave Arakawa. I'm the Executive Director for the Land Use Research Foundation of Hawaii, and we represent a number of the large developers and the two major utility companies, Hawaiian Electric and Hawaii Gas. And we have an all-star cast actually here today of developers: Stanford Carr, Harry Saunders, Christine Camp, and Tracy Tonaki. And we'll be introducing them as they come up. One of the speakers talked about the shortage of land. I think it was Dean Uchida, shortage of developable land. And just a point, and I'll give you folks a slide or information, but in the state of Hawaii, 48% of all lands in the state of Hawaii are conservation. 47% of all lands in the state of Hawaii is agriculture. Only 5% of the lands in the state are urban, on which you could build housing or businesses or industrial, and less than 1% is rural. So that's what we're working with, and the speakers will talk about, you know, the challenges with that. Okay, our first speaker today is Mr. Harry Sanders, and he hails from the People's Republic of Kailua, and he is a proud Kailua surf rider. He has spent 51 years in the real estate development business, and the types of projects he's developed include residential, mixed use, and really Castle and Cooke is a community builder. So he's the CEO of Castle and Cooke Hawaii, and Castle and Cooke has developed over 24,000 housing units over the past 40 years, and 16,000 of those units are affordable. And a little known fact about Harry, at the tender age of 20, before he took the broker's exam, Harry was a supervisor of 4 real estate offices with over 200 agents. Okay, Harry, take it away.
So I think we're still having some connectivity issues. I understand there's a HECO power outage, and I drove through that traffic. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next panelist, if you don't mind, Dave. And then when Harry can log in, we'll let you know. But thank you for that introduction.
So are you guys going to do Harry now, or should we do Stanford? Tracy Tanaki?
We'll go ahead and move with Tracy until Harry is able to log in, because I think there's still some connectivity issues.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Well, Tracy Tanaki is the Senior Vice President of Land Use Development and at D.R. Horton, and she's from East Honolulu. So she says, I'm a Kaisa Cougar, and she's been in real estate development for 18 years, and D.R. Horton does mixed use and residential, and she's had a hand in developing over thousands of units. The present project she's working on, Ho'opili, plans for 11,750 units. 30% are affordable, 120% AMI and below. And they have developed, D.R. Horton has developed over 47 years, 14,000 affordable housing units. Okay. A little known fact about Tracy is pre-COVID, she despised exercise. Now she loves walking, and she walks at least 26 miles a week, including 13 miles on one day during the weekend. So Tracy is going to be doing a presentation on the cost of housing, or the rising cost of housing.
Thank you, Dave. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. I want to say thanks to the Honolulu Board of Realtors and Dave at LURF for inviting me to be a part of this esteemed panel. It's my honor to help share a little bit about home building and development with Harry, Christine, and Stanford today. I also want to commend Director Uchida. Dean has, it's commendable that he took the helm as the director of the Department of Planning and Permitting, but additionally, he has been very collaborative in these first couple months of his leadership there, and is really working with the builders and developers in the community to peel back the onion and really dig down and make some changes there that are going to be positive for all of us in the future. And so please, it's nice to hear that we all want to give him the support he needs. And I encourage everyone to do that. I also want to give a shout out to my partners at D.R. Horton. I know you are all familiar with them. Ryan Gross and Mary Flood, who have led our sales teams for the past 4 decades, as well as our outstanding sales teams that we now have out at Ho'opili. If you don't know them, please absolutely call. My little known fact, I will say, is I did hate exercising. Actually told my doctor that when she said I had high blood pressure prior to COVID. But as everyone has seen, COVID has changed our lifestyles quite a bit. I have found myself to have more time to actually take long walks and found reconnected with my close group of girlfriends from Kaiser. One of them on the call, Darcy Yoshimoto, who is going to follow us on our Biki bike this Sunday as we try and finish our Hapalua 13-mile Hapalua trek. Go Cougars. So I'm going to share my screen because I have a presentation that I wanted to, hopefully it'll show up. Oops. That's not it, sorry. Forgive me. Here we go. Can you see the first slide called Ho'opili Master Plan? Great,
Okay,
thank you.
let me, I'm just gonna go ahead and check with Maila. Is he in the waiting room, do you know, or is he? Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So many of you have heard of Ho'opili Master Plan Community out in East Kapolei. I know, again, Ryan, Mary, and the sales team have shared, I'm sure, quite a bit of information on the product offering and the home and multifamily offering that we have out there. So today I'm going to focus on the development and cost side of the business a little bit, so that maybe I can share and give everyone a better understanding of what's really in the cost of housing. So Ho'opili is a master plan community out again in East Kapolei. It's comprised of over 1,500 acres of land that was targeted for urban development by the city and county of Honolulu for many, many decades. We purchased it from the Campbell Estate Company in 2006, and it took us over 10 years to get it entitled and zoned through the State Land Use Commission and the City and County of Honolulu's City Council. It's zoned for 11,750 residential units, several million square feet of commercial units. It'll have over 200 acres of permanent agricultural lands, urban and community gardens, an IMX subdivision. It'll have one TOD station called the Honouliuli Station at Ho'opili on Ho'opili's property, and 2 stations, the US West Oahu and the station by the Kroc Center, just off of Ho'opili. It also will comprise of 5 Department of Education school sites, 3 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school within Ho'opili, as well as 3 large city and county district parks. In 2017, July particularly, we moved our first family in, a local family, the Daytogs, into the first home at Ho'opili. And to date, over the last 4 years, we have over 1,200 families living in a D.R. Horton home at Ho'opili. In addition, we have a little over 400 rental units that we partnered to build in Ho'opili with Mutual Housing Association of Hawaii, as well as we sold a property to Alakai Development, who are finishing up their affordable and rental project called The Element. Sales prices range from the high 200,000s to the high 900,000s. And These are homes, representing homes for families earning 30% to 200% of the area median income. So let me share a little bit about the infrastructure of housing. So new housing today really is not just about the 4 houses and the roof that home buyers see visually when they visit model homes or homes for sale. At Ho'opili, there's a whole slew menu of infrastructure that needs to be built in order to support the 11,750 homes that are being built. And this infrastructure is a requirement for new homes to be built, and it is a requirement of the developer and builder to build them. So I've listed a few here. Makakilo Sewer Interceptor, which is a large regional improvement to the sewer system, as well as a UH West Oahu sewer line that's going to benefit the University of Hawaii West Oahu. We are just completing the first of 2.5 million gallon border water supply potable water tanks. If you can see it up here above, it's located at a 440-foot elevation level and is with over 2-mile water transmission line that was drilled underneath the freeway to provide potable water for the upper half of Ho'opili. We're also going to be building a 2 million gallon non-potable water tank for the border water supply to feed the irrigation system within Ho'opili. We're going to relocate and are in the process of relocating a 42-inch regional border water supply water line within Ho'opili so that we can prepare the lands for home building. We have multiple temporary drainage basins as well as a large permanent drainage basin that will need to be built to satisfy our drainage requirements for all of the homes. Farrington Highway will be widened, is in the process of being designed to be widened to 4 lanes. And we will be donating or contributing 20 acres of the land in Ho'opili for that widening project. We have set aside lands for the HART elevated rail guideway system that runs right through our property today. 3 HECO substations will be built on Ho'opili, and we're partnering with HECO to get those built in a timely manner. And then roads, lots of roadways that are going to be built at Ho'opili. So this gives you an idea of the infrastructure, the breadth of infrastructure that's required to build 11,750 homes at Ho'opili. So let me get into a little bit of the cost of housing. Again, when we hear the average median sales price of a home in the media is at $800,000, $900,000. Many people, visualize again the 4 walls and the roof of a house. But I like to share a little bit more about the cost categories that are really included in new home construction. So we all know land is a large cost factor in Hawaii. Then you have the cost to entitlement, which I believe Harry Saunders is going to touch a little more on. Again, Ho'opili went through 10 years of entitlements and rezoning to get to where we are today. Then we have roadways. We have to build drainage, stormwater quality systems. There's the cost for the sewer systems, the cost for the water system, the cost for the electrical systems. Then we get to the cost for the vertical sticks and bricks, or the walls and the roof of the homes. And then in addition to that, we have homeowner association costs for condominiums and the master community association. We have the city roadway dedication process that adds time and cost to be able to turn over the roadways for the city and county to maintain. So right now we've identified about 10 cost categories that are all included in the cost of a new home today. So let me touch upon how that cost continues to rise. So when we purchased the land and we went through our entitlement process, these 10 cost categories were known to us. We knew we had to build them. They were all conditions to our zoning approvals. What we're seeing today, though, is as every month goes by and every year goes by, the costs of these categories continue to rise, right? So roadways, as the city or the state or agencies come up with new policies, new requirements, they get added on to the cost of the roadways, additional bike lanes, multi-use pathways, more roadways that we didn't think we needed to build, but are getting added to our requirement. Stormwater quality, when the federal government creates new stormwater quality mandates at the federal level, it all filters down to the state and cities and the home builders. So we have to add hydrodynamic separators and residential stormwater quality management fees for inspections. Sewer systems, the city, you know, in their effort to build systems that will stand the test of time and minimize maintenance over the long term, are requiring that we upgrade manholes and sewer lines to prevent or minimize maintenance in the long run, but it adds cost upfront in new home construction. The Board of Water Supply, same thing. They want to build systems that are going to stand the test of times. Completely understand that, but the cost of adding cathodic protection and bonded dielectric coatings on ductile iron piping adds an enormous amount of cost to the new construction of roadways. Electrical systems, same thing. HECO is going to do their part to ensure that they're representing the public with systems that can be maintained over time, but their requirements increase, adding costs to housing. And then vertical sticks and bricks. When if some of you may be familiar with Bill 25 that recently went through the City Council that adopted the new state city and county energy code, it added and made it mandated solar hot water on all new home construction and disallowed the use of instant gas water heaters. And that adds to the cost of a single family home, new single family home. The state and the city adopted the 2012 IBC that required impact resistant windows for new home construction. That adds cost to a new home. And then homeowner and the HOA fees, right? City is unable to maintain a lot of the landscaping that is being required to put into whole Pili. And so the burden of the landscaping and maintenance falls on the homeowners association. And then the city roadway dedication process. It is long and it is arduous. And we spend a lot of money addressing inspections and punch lists in order to be able to dedicate the roads to the city so that the homeowners are no longer required to take care of them. So as you can see, the 10 cost categories of housing continue to rise year over year because of new policies, new requirements, new codes. So this is a case study, as I mentioned before, of Bill 25, was the city's adoption of the 2015 energy code. And what you're looking at here is a cost estimate that we provided, and it was a collaboration of home builders, Castle and Cook, as well as D.R. Horton, of some of the costs, the actual costs that were calculated by what was being proposed in Bill 25. As you can see, the cost range per home for a single family, Bill 25 in one fell swoop added $5,500 to $9,400 a home, multifamily $1,900 to $5,900. Solar hot water for a single family home added anywhere from $4,500 to $7,500. EV infrastructure that is the city wanted to include so that people can charge their electric vehicles added $1,400 to $4,500. So in collectively, Bill 25 added $8,800 to $18,000 for a single family home and $4,200 to $10,000 for a multifamily home. So it's just an example, a case study that we walked through with the city council and with the city back in 2019 to share our cost analysis. And so that hopefully a cost benefit analysis can be discussed and contemplated when policy is being adopted. So housing, as I've said, is suffering a death by 1,000 cuts. Singularly focused bills, policy, governmental department decisions have wide-ranging cost implications for housing. I refer to it's just another $500 myth, where we hear many times that, well, we'll just add this, we'll approve this because it's just another $500. It's just $500 that it adds to a house. It's just another $500 to add hydrodynamic separators. It's just another $500 to conduct air infiltration duct testing. It's just another $500 to cover long-term bicycle parking. But if you think about it, excuse me, my apology. If you just 10 of these, just another $500 adds up to $500 per home. Then you add the $8,800 per home to comply with Bill 25, another $8,000 per home for impact resistant windows that the 2012 IBC added. And then you add $4,500 for a solar hot water heater, $2,500 to repave roadways and address road inspections, and another $940 to comply with the 2014 National Electrical Code adoption. Pretty soon you're adding a rolling consolidated added cost of nearly $30,000 per home or condo. And that's just in the last 1 to 2 years. And it doesn't include things that are out of our control, like national and global material pricings. And I do want to share a little bit about that. What we have seen in the last 2 months is the price of wood and plywood went up 100%. The price of steel studs, the price of wood and plywood went up 300%. The price of steel studs went up 100%. That's twice as much as it was last year. And the price of plumbing pipes went up 100%. So there are added costs to the house that are out of our control, but we can focus on hopefully contributing to what or influence those that are in our control. So housing, again, suffering a death by 1,000 slices. Every bill, every policy, every decision that is made is legitimate and justifiable. I'm not arguing that at all, because we do all want to protect the health and safety and the environment. So we absolutely agree. The problem is housing simply can't afford it anymore. I think you can all agree with the housing shortage and lack of inventory and the rising cost of housing. We just can't afford it anymore. So what is the solution? We believe the solution is to create and support effective policy that makes housing a top priority. We all say that we're in a housing crisis and we need to make housing a priority, but a lot of the decisions that are being made counteract that. We need to require, whenever you're talking to someone in a decision-making decision, require that a cost-benefit analysis be provided or done so that we can really see how that decision will affect the cost of housing. And then we can have balanced discussions on new policy. Collectively, I think we all need to educate, collaborate, and commit to making housing available for all. And that's the reality we need to do if we really want to have a shot at solving our housing shortage. Thank you. That's all I had. I'll turn it back over to Dave so that maybe Harry can jump back on.
Thank you, Tracy, so much for that amazing presentation. That was so much information. Okay, Dave, I see you now, so I'll let you take over. Oh, I don't think we can hear you. I think we're still having some connection issues. So I will go ahead and introduce our next speaker and panelist, Mr. Harry Saunders, the president of Castle and Cooke, Hawaii. I think we have him on next to be able to speak about Castle and Cooke projects.
There I am.
There you are. Aloha. Thank you for
Aloha.
being here.
I was here the whole time. You just didn't recognize my name. I logged in with somebody else, I guess.
Yeah, I think you logged in
Thank
under me, so I
Yeah.
apologize for that.
I said,
Did you
I
get?
was confused when you said I wasn't here, and I heard Dean show up the whole time.
Oh, thank you so much for your patience.
No
Did
problem. Thank
Did you
you.
get to hear
Hey.
Dave's amazing introduction of you?
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, I've been doing this a while. I actually started off as a salesman, as he said, back in 1971, and was a realtor for a couple of different firms, and then I headed up with Castle and Cooke as a salesman, became a sales manager, and then kept going, gotten into the development side of it. So it's, you know, you speak to how realtors are touching with the buyers and sellers, and that's sort of my background, is working with the buyers and sellers on a daily basis. And I have personally sold over 1,000 homes, because roughly selling for 10 years at about 75 to 100 homes a year with Castle and Cooke, and then prior to that. So I've had that face to face and understand, and that's one of the things I kind of reach back to when we've gone through the entitlement process, explaining to the council members, is that, you know, it's a very personal thing when you're dealing with a buyer and you tell them you can't buy a home. I had asked, I think I have a quick presentation. I don't know how to do it, and you were going to put me on. Malia, there it is. And what I wanted to point to, what we're discussing here is the high cost of housing. Now, this came from The Price of Paradise by Roth, Mr. Roth. And one of the things, if you take a look here by Corky, is talking about the frustration of affordable housing. And to put a perspective on how long we've been talking about this, on the right side of your screen, you're talking about the housing crisis and saying, you know, we're in a crisis here. We've been shortfalling this at this time 36,000 homes. But if you look down at the bottom, this is a Honolulu Advertiser, March 23rd, 1969. That's how long we've been talking about this crisis of housing. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And this is my favorite economist out there, and this is a slide that Mr. Brubaker has put together and has presented to many different organizations over the year, and he just keeps extending it. But this speaks to the number of homes being built, building permits that, you know, Dean was, you know, talking about. And you can see from the 1920s, it was around, about 2,000 units a year. And then it steadily rose up through 75 after statehood. And we saw a lot of growth in Enchanted Lakes, Kahala, Hawaii, Kai, and Makiki, et cetera. We got up to almost 12,000 units a year. This is in Oahu, I believe. Yeah, Oahu home building. Then came about the Constitution Convention, institution of the Land Use Commission, and contested case. Coincidentally, I guess people felt that there was too much housing, and there was an urge to protect agriculture, because if you recall back in the 60s and 70s, our number one industry was agriculture, pineapple and sugar. And so there was a real concern about protecting that industry, and rightfully so. But then after the Land Use Commission, there you can see in 1975, 76, dramatic drop in the number of permits issued. And that wasn't because permits were slow, that's because you could not get through the land use process. And it dropped and it's been consistently, steadily going down in 1990, and I think it's about the same for 20. It's around 2,000 units. Again, that's kind of where we started back in the 20s. So that kind of explains, and I'm very simple in that supply and demand tells me a lot. Obviously, we have a strong economy. Regardless of the pandemic, we have a lot of people working. Interest rates are very low. And so it's a very attractive time to buy, and Hawaii is a great place to live, but we're not producing enough homes. No surprise then that we don't have an inventory. You see it in the MLS figures. I think we're at one of the lowest levels of the total number of units on the market. I think we're under 2 months supply. That tells you you're in a very strong market, and it doesn't appear to be a bubble. It appears to be a lack of supply. And then I want to speak a little bit to Tracy. Did a great job of doing the whole ladder of cost. I just want to kind of give a sample of what we've experienced at Koa Ridge, and I'm going to show you some numbers that are, probably somewhat proprietary, but you could go out and bid them and get them yourself. So I'm not giving away the store. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Interesting thing here. I'm talking about the cost for my first subdivision approvals and process time. You look at the top, I submitted to the Land Use Commission for the first time in November of 2000. We actually started our planning work in the mid to late 1990s and went through all the process and studies, et cetera, to go through the land use. We're very good at land use approvals. We actually got land use approvals 3 times, 2002, 2010, 2012. If we had been successful in 2002 with going on to zoning, if it hadn't been appealed on land court decisions, and we had been able to start, the median home price was about $300,000. This fast forward to 2020, after we've gone through the master planning process, and just to get planning, design, and process and land use is about 7 million. The land use process has added about another 4 million. So there's about 11 or 12 million spent before we started any construction. Then if I just take a look at infrastructure, not vertical, just my on-site infrastructure for our 3 different projects, and cost to build those, I'm at 140. I'm roughly at about 148 to 149 million before I delivered my first home. That's a 20-year process, 150 million. Oh, and the median price is what, 950. So it's tripled. 20 years has done a lot to our cost here. So that's just sort of, because one of your questions is, where do we get land from? We've done it. Councilman Cook has the history of agriculture. We had land throughout the state, and we converted, as we saw agriculture declining and the need for housing, we converted to home building on a limited amount. As David said, only 5-6% of the entire state is urban entitled. So it's not that we're paving over paradise, because I don't think 6% counts as paving over, but it's there. To that end, we're working with, and one of the other questions when you look at all these processes is the number of agencies that we had to deal with and the number of reviews. So we're just going through, not public hearings, just the review processes for all of these items. We counted roughly 79 agencies, or 27 agencies in the design stage, another 13 agencies 4 times for each of the subdivision processes. And then the number of times they reviewed comes out to a total of 550. That's how many times we went back and forth with each agency. And just imagine the time and the cost of our engineers, et cetera. Then I asked for, I checked to see how many public hearings did we have? And that total was over 70 public hearings over that 20-year period. So community has been informed. And that's not even counting the number of times we've gone to presentations to realtors, to various industries, to labor unions, et cetera. That's just official public hearings required by the county, state, planning commission, neighborhood boards, et cetera. So that's part of the 1,000 cuts that Tracy was referring to. And I agree that if we go back to the beginning of, we've been dealing with this from 1969, and people have talked about the housing crisis. I agree with her punch points, and this is what we're trying to communicate. And this is where the realtors can come in to help. We have to say, if housing is really our top concern and our top item, we need to say housing is a priority and we need to go forward. We're not going to regulate affordable housing. We're going to have to build housing. We need to do more than 2,000 homes a year. We need to do it faster than 20 years, or even Horton's 10 years. We need to do it sooner. And we need to say, why do we have to go back just from my subdivision process and the master plans, et cetera? Why do we have to go to 550 touches by the government agencies? I'm not sure that says housing's a priority. With that, I'm going to cut it short because Tracy did such a good job. And I think I want to turn it over to the others. Tracy and I are both greenfield developers. Stanford has done greenfield, but he's doing more of the infill, which is where some of the desire to go, where we're trying to get people closer to town or closer to the rail. Christine has done a full range of everything, has done both residential, rental, and industrial development over the years. They're both of them are a lot younger than me and a lot smarter than me. So I think I'll turn it over to them. Aloha.
Aloha, Harry. Dave, are you on?
Yeah, Jennifer, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you. Your photo is a phone icon, so that's basically you all the time, right, on the phone. So kind of matches.
Right. Okay. I lost the internet connection, so we're trying to bring it up. But anyway, our next speaker is very important, more important than my picture. He is Stanford Carr, and everyone knows Stanford Carr and Stanford Carr Development. He hails from the onion capital of the world, Hula, Maui, and is a proud Maui High graduate. Go Sabres. He's been in the real estate development business for 33 years. He develops all types of projects, greenfield, condos, mixed use, residential, commercial. He does a lot of stuff and does a lot of stuff well. He's developed over 6,300 units in his career. 60% of those units have been affordable, so approximately 3,800 units affordable. And a little known fact about Stanford is he started his entrepreneurial career at 12 years old as a kula farmer. So Stanford, you're on deck. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dave. And thank you for having me. I'm honored to be participating with an esteemed group of panelists, and also want to echo what Tracy was saying about Dean Uchida. We have been in conversations with Dean to look at every step of the approval process through DPP and the various agencies that both Tracy and Harry have shared with you of the approval process. And we're looking at getting down into the weeds of how can we streamline the processes, and so that we can eliminate a lot of the redundancies. As you can see, policy decisions that have been adopted through whether it be the council, our state legislature, our different agencies, has been added on top of the layers of review and approvals that Harry just spoke to. Just to give it a better context as to the timing. 30 years ago, we could buy a piece of property and be in the ground within less than a year. In fact, when we purchased the peninsula in August of 2000, we started our mass grading in April of 2001 and opened our models in October of 2001. There's the difference. More recently, we're now building in the cottages in Mauna Olu in Makaha. It took us 2.5 years from the time we acquired the property, and it's already zoned. It's resort zone property. It took us 2.5 years before we could break ground with infrastructure. So that's a good reflection of how much layers have been compounded in the approval process, and that is without having to take the property through entitlements. Now, we've been involved with master plan communities, starting with the villages of Kapolei, developing Village 4, Kekuilani, and Ivalani in the early 90s. And again, it would be about, from the time we entered into a development agreement with the HFDC at the time to the point in time that we would break ground would be about approximately 15 months. And during the early 90s, we were producing approximately 20 homes a month. Keikuilani was a mixed-use, mixed-income community with 360 single-family homes, 90 for-sale entry-level condominiums, and 156 rental apartments. The median home price that we were delivering back then was $90,000 for the townhouses and approximately $160,000 to $175,000 for the single-family detached homes. Look at where we are today, nearly 30 years later, with a median home price near $900,000, and that is attributable to the time it takes and the costs incurred of the entitlements, the conditions of approvals that include exactions. What Tracy has shared with you is the step-by-step increases in costs for all of the improvements, adoption of codes, and there's a lot of initiatives that are contributing to that. One is working with Dave Arakawa, LERF, and the professional engineering and architectural community this year. We submitted legislation to change the process of the State Building Code Council are appointing the members, because this is the council that's adopting and approving code adoptions that affect the impacts of all construction. Tracy brought up to your attention the adoption of the 2012 code with respect to the wind resistant windows, and that's an added $8,000 to $10,000 cost per home. This is in addition to the state legislature and DOE imposing a Department of Education impact fee, which does not differentiate for affordable rentals or for sale housing. So it's a multiple of many layers of review, processing, impact fees, and costs of improvements in return for obtaining your entitlements. More recently, over the last few years, we've been doing a lot more urban infill starting with Halekauila, a high-density multifamily rental apartment, and subsequent to that was Keauhou Place, where we had the opportunity to work with Kamehameha Schools to master plan an entire block, and what we felt would be a recipe for future mixed-use transit-oriented developments. We had 209 rental apartments, 423 condos, including 35 townhouses that lines the parking structure along South Street in Pohukaina. So you're not looking at a monolithic parking structure, but a more humanistic scale of architecture. And rising out of the middle of the block is a 43-story, 399-unit condominium of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units. We are now planning another block with Kamehameha Schools. They call it Block C. It's the block of Oahi, Koro, Pohukaina, and Cook, where here we're going to attempt to do an amalgamation of what we've built over the years in Kaka'ako, starting with Halekauila Place, Keauhou Place, and in 2019 we completed Halekewalo, which is on the corner of Kona and Piikoi. So this next community, we're planning a little over 800 units. It'll involve 125 rental apartments, where about 50 of the units will reach deep affordability down to the workforce rentals, serving households earning 30% to 60% of the area median income, and the remaining 75 units will serve households earning between 60 to 100% of the area median income. We're also planning entry-level first-time condos, serving households 100 to 140% AMI. That will be about 275 condos in a 32-story tower. And then we'll have a 43-story tower with approximately 437 1, 2, and 3-bedroom condos that will be serving households between 140 and 160. So it's a mixed-income, mixed-use community with 40,000 square feet of ground floor commercial to amenitize the neighborhood and for our residents. We're also, at the moment, working on re-entitling what was known as AL Live Work Play, the old Cam Drive-In. And here again, we're planning 5 towers, a Safeway, a Chick-fil-A. So it's going to be a village of mixed-use, mixed-income communities, but Here, another example is we have conditions of approval to do approximately $10 million of off-site improvements to improve the flow of traffic along Moanalua Road and Kaunohi Street. Here again, we're planning a mixed income, mixed use, starting with one tower that will be completely dedicated to rentals. And we're committing this to rentals from the very low income workforce up to 100% AMI, and committing it to as reserve units for the next 65 years. We'll also have a combination of entry-level for-sale condos as well as some moderate. We're being very cautious as we approach this project, because there's really no comps in the Pearl City neighborhood. The last condominium community built in this neighborhood was over 40 years ago, being the Park at Pearl Ridge. So we're excited about this. I look forward to the dialogue and questions. I did not put together a PowerPoint presentation, given what Tracy had put together and Harry, that it speaks for itself as to what we go through. Welcome to our world. Dave, I'll turn it back to you, and I look forward to the conversations. Thank you. Did we lose it?
No.
Dave, are you with us?
Oh, we lost Dave. Oh.
Okay. Hi, Stanford. Thank you very much for the presentation. Really great. Look forward to the Q&A, and the people listening can ask you a lot of questions. Our next presenter is, and cleanup batter is Christine Camp, and she's a East Honolulu girl, a Kalani High School Falcon, and in fact, she was a song leader at Kalani. Remember the big red carnation lays? And she still has her song leader gloves, believe it or not. Anyway, she's been in the real estate development business right out of high school. So she's been in the business for 30 years. And the types of projects she's developed is all over the map. It includes residential, commercial, mixed use, industrial. She's done apartments, condos, single family, primarily an infill developer, infill or opportunity developer. And the thing about Christine is she's willing to try all different types of innovative things with her projects. In one of her projects, she experimented with buying the parking stalls a la carte. The buyers could buy parking stalls a la carte or car services for residents. So she tries a lot of things in her projects, a lot of innovative things. She's developed in her career over 3,000 residential units, including Oahu, Maui, and Kauai. And with Avalon, her company, the company she's the CEO of, 1,000 units, and 1/3 of those units, or over 3,000, are affordable under HUD and the Hawaii state law. Another little known fact about Christine is that she sang in an opera, Hawaii Opera Theater's Othello and Aida. So Christine, please sing or do your presentation. Thank you. Hello?
Oh, Christine, I think you're on mute.
Ah, there we go. Okay. I also don't have a presentation, but while I was listening to everyone, I decided that I'll prepare something. So I actually prepared something. Can I email this to someone so you can put it on the board? Because I realize I'm using.
Yes, you can email it to me. I can put my email in the chat.
What is your email address?
So it's MAILA.
Okay. Okay, so it's an Excel spreadsheet with 2 worksheets. If you could just put it onto finance. So what I'm going to talk about is, I think that one of the focuses that I always like to do is to educate those of us who are in the industry, because I realize that we all have different focuses, and being the board of realtors and the number that you represent, you can have such a huge impact. So I wanted to spend this time to share with you. And so could you blow that up a little bit, or can I go on to it and maybe I can ask you? Okay, so If you can blow it up to, yeah. Is it possible for me to be able to navigate that? Can you give me control? If not, don't worry about it. Okay, so I'm going to educate you on something that is happening right now. In fact, it was just introduced on the 7th. It's a resolution. The good things that the current administration is doing is turning into a resolution. And in fact, I told Dean, I hope he got my message, that I am going to be talking about this new resolution that answers the question, what can we do? What can we do to help? So let's put it in perspective. Current resolution 2190 says that DPP has 60 days to respond to the council's resolution. As resolution is really kind of a dictate by the council in Honolulu, asking the director and the department to respond to some of the concerns that they may have. So it almost is a force of law. So last year, 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, DPP processed over 15,500 permits, okay? Now, mind you, DPP reviews 50 plus types of building related permits for new construction. There are 20 different categories of occupancy groups, hotel, resi, cluster, whatever it may be. Now, 75% of that 15,000 permits was for single and two family occupancy group, single family, like what we want to live in. And then, so that represents the single family portion. 93% of that single family portion, or a little over 10,000, or close to 11,000 permit applications processed in 1 year, was for alterations, repairs, additions. Just think about that, okay? Now, 25% that wasn't resi was commercial, like my industrial parks and things of that nature. But 95% is for additions, alterations, repairs, related permits, meaning they're not adding anything. It's just improving. So how much is the addition? You're talking about 1,000 permit. 1,000 permit of something new. I'm stunned by those numbers. So, and out of that, that's not even all homes, right? And this is in the middle of the pandemic. This is what's happening. All the things that we're asking the DPP to do, they have this mandate to review these small time permits. You want a fence, you got to go through the exact same process as if you're building a high rise almost. How is that going to allow us to build the number of homes that we need, right? So just want to give you this perspective. I was just stunned when I was looking at this number. Now, the changes that they made in 2020 were really good, but we could do better. And I'm so excited that we have someone from the industry that is going to advocate for these concerns. I can't say advocate for us, the industry, but advocate for our community, for the building of the homes that we're all talking about. Now, average permit time for commercial is 261 days. They were able to reduce it to 208 days. That's 8 months to 7 months. And that includes high rises. Average permit for single family, right? One home that you want to build was 126 days. It actually went up to 127 days. I don't know what happened there, but this is average. So there are a few that have gone even longer, right? Building permit thresholds. I know you guys are all talking about 1,500 and all that, but actually it went up very quietly. I didn't even realize this. I have to double check the code, but it went from 1,000 to 5,000. I'm scratching my head saying, why, all that effort, why 5,000? Why not 25,000? Construction costs are skyrocketing. I have to build a wall, a little section along my driveway. The quote was $25,000 for just the front of my house. Why 5,000? So the last time this was changed was back in 1980s. I think it's time for us to look at, and then we changed it to 1,500, I think, in the last 10 years. We need to be looking at $50,000 thresholds for the amount of expense that we incur to build even the minutest alterations. Doing cabinets. Who spends less than $5,000 on cabinets? And yet you're required officially to get permits. Of course, most of us, try to find alternatives to not have to go through permits. So unless it's plumbing or electrical or what have you. But the reason I'm belaboring these points is that if we're really serious about building homes, we've got to address this. And so, I always used to say streamline permits, get rid of the red tape. Everybody says that, but that is not helpful. It is not helpful. What is helpful is getting down to the details. So if you have something to share, share. And if you're unsure and you don't want to be targeted, send it to people like us who are willing to speak out for the community. Stanford's out there all the time. Harry's out there all the time. Tracy, I'm here. Dave speaks for the industry, but you need to share these stories, even down to the smallest, because we can say, oh, cut the red tape, but no one knows what to do. What does red tape mean? Okay, so now the resolution talks about 7 steps. 7 steps that they want to do. One was e-permitting. They're putting everything into e-permitting, except for those, just doing in-person permits by exception. I think it makes sense, except the people who are doing that are not trained. They don't even have equipment to the 20th century, let alone 21st century for most of them. I mean, you've seen people faxing things to city and state. Well, city is actually a lot better than the state, but they're in the archaic ages. So we need to provide support, financial support for budgeting. So when the mayor says, I need this budget for DPP, we need to be out there supporting him. Even if it means a little bit of higher property taxes. This last year during the pandemic in Honolulu, there were $2.5 billion worth of economic activity through construction. That's how many projects were legally permitted in 2020. Can you imagine if we could just simplify the process, potentially maybe double it to, let me know when government gets out of the way. So it's training staffing. So the first step is e-permit, the decision to do that in a major way. And 2 is to make sure that they have the funding for the equipment and software upgrades. And 3, you have all this beautiful equipment, but you don't know how to use it. Like, I bought an iPhone and it took me 2 months to figure out all the features. And here I am 2 years later, I'm still figuring out that there's stuff that I haven't used at all. So we need to make sure that they have the training, but not just them. People like us, realtors, we need the training. So they need money to spend to go out and do training in a way that is going to be effective. Not just to say we did 10 trainings, but we say we did training with these people and now they're using the system. If they're not using it after 10 sessions of training, then they're doing something wrong. You need to go back and train again. So it's the efficacy of these programs. So I'm looking for that. Now this is all in the resolution for those of you who are interested. 4, increase the number of third-party reviews. I see some questions that from the text that I've seen earlier about third-party reviews. And third-party reviews is where you pay to play, right? I mean, truly, you're basically having to pay somebody who seems to know the system better, or somebody who is willing to put their name on the line to review your plans for you. So you don't have to wait in line for the city to review your plans. And I know for one, it costs tens of thousands of dollars for our projects. And you just saw people got arrested because they were stuffing money in an envelope. Oh my goodness, but these things were happening. So why not review the third-party review process and expand it to include zoning maybe? Right now, they're only reviewing the MEP, mechanical engineering and plumbing, and maybe some of the structural elements that are very finite. But what we need is we need more of them available, trained, and also have more of them doing other types of approvals. Civil engineering, for example, if you have to do a new driveway, you can't do a third-party review. No one will do a civil engineering third-party review. You have to go through the process. And heaven forbid your house is older than 50 years old. You have to go through the state review process, which is another thing. And I'll talk about that at another time. But so having said that, that's item number 4. And item number 5, identifying the bottlenecks, and sorry, that's a typo, and choke points other than DPP for cross-training. Meaning DPP is trying, and someone had mentioned it before. People who work there are very smart people. They're nicest people. They just want to do right by you. They want to do right by the community. And it's not just us, right? You got all the environmentalists, the Hawaiian activists. Everybody wants their say. The people with the burials, the historic, preservation people, whatever it may be, they have to be balanced. And in their attempt to be balanced, it puts them in a very awkward position. And because they're government employees, they don't get applauded for the jobs that they do well. They get chided and picked on and sued for the things that they do wrong. There's very little motivation. And that's why you have government employees who kind of put a stop to helping us in a way that is very meaningful. So what we need to do is to make them feel free. They're living in the same society we are. They're worried about their kids staying home too. They're worried about buying their first home or move up home or, being affordable. But they're in the same average median income as we do. So they want the same things that we want. But we need to help train them where the choke points are and how they can help. So those of you who are in this industry and have been going through it a lot, instead of just complaining, don't bring a complaint. Bring solutions, bring ideas. And it has to be balanced. We can't just talk about our side. It needs to be balanced for the better of the whole community. So the proposed addition registration to exempt permits. So there are some permits that you can be exempted, right? Like anything under 5,000, things that don't affect, mechanical, electrical, civil, all of that may be exempt from permits, but let's expand that pool. If we're in an urban area, and the area has been already disturbed and developed and has all the water, sewer, plumbing, and all that, and we're just going to be expanding a size of a room, why do we need a permit? If we're not, all those things, $50,000, why stop at 5,000? Why not 50,000? Why not 100,000? Why not self-certify? Why can't the owner self-certify this is to the permit requirements and regulations, or have architects self-certify? And then 7, examine ways to streamline streamline permits, right? That's a general catch-all. Let's find other things to do to streamline the permits. So below the next box, third-party review and self-certification. I want to talk about that. New York City went through a self-certification process. They opened it up back in 1975. In 2006, 46%, or maybe 48% to 49%. I got different numbers everywhere. I'm getting it from different sources, but 48 to 49% of all of the permits in 2006, when they look back, I don't know what the numbers are. I don't live in New York City. I don't read their newspapers. I'm just looking at some of the research statistics. But in 2006, when they did review it, 49%, just under half of all the new construction that were done, or additions or what have you, were self-certified. And what do we mean by self-certification? It means architects, engineers who we pay to know the code, who we pay to make sure they're insured, are certifying that everything that they designed for construction is to code. Self-certification is as easy as that. Of course, there's going to be a lot of nuances, but I'm simplifying it. Maybe we do self-certifications for single-family homes. Maybe for anything under 500,000, that let's focus on the things that is going to move the needle, like Stanford Carr's project, where he's doing 300-400 units at a time. Let's move the needle by focusing on Coral Ridge, where they're doing thousands of homes, or Ho'opili. But the ones where people are just adjusting, adding, redeveloping on their old house, they're demolishing their mother's house as 800 square foot cottage on a 5,000 square foot lot, and want to put 2 homes so the 2 families can live side by side in privacy, why not self-certify? Let's get that out of the table so that people can focus and process much faster all the permits that's in front of them, right? So that's where the resolution discussion is happening. I think fantastic. Thank you to the elected council members. Thank you to the administration for having thought of it. They've just articulated what we've been saying. Cut the red tape. But we haven't told them how. There are many, many different voices. I ask you, 10,000 plus members of the, the Board of Realtors, to join us and be our voices. When we ask you, so I can tell you that when Tracy is talking about Bill 25 or most recently Bill 2, we needed a lot of voices. Why? Because environmentalists tell stories, right, that are relevant to you. We love trees. We need to make sure that all new developers who are building buildings make room for the tree canopies. Now, who says no to that? So they had tens of thousands of people saying yes to it, hundreds of people coming out to testify against a number of 4 or 5 of us proposing yes to, no to these large setbacks. Setbacks of 40 feet, setbacks of 25 feet. Now, in Texas, that may not mean too much. In Hawaii, in an urban setting along Kapiolani Boulevard, oh my God, what do you have left to build? So it would have been really nice if every member of the Board of Realtors submitted testimony. And testifying is so easy now. It's online, right? And all of us are now techies. We can do online. So we would ask that when we ask you, when we're asking you, we're doing it for the greater good in the sense that we're building housing. Now, some people might say, no. Oh, those guys are all building homes. So, $750,000, that's not affordable. Why aren't they building more rental housing? My personal view, I don't want to build rental housing. I want to build rental housing with government monies. So you can get tax credit monies to apply and reserve that for the truly achievable rental housing. But when you rent, you're just warehousing people. What you want is to create the instances where people can buy, even if it's a $300,000 walk-up, live there, build up an equity, pay rent to themselves towards their equity so that they can buy a townhouse. And then they can buy their single family house. That's the American dream. And that's how wealth is achieved. You all know that. That's why you're in that industry. We need your help to speak that focus. Tell us about your first-time home buyers. Share that story with the city council members when they're, looking at project approvals and then demanding, bam, okay, well, we're going to give you a 10.0 FAR. So therefore, you need to build 50% affordable subsidized rentals. You're going to come in and say, yes, that's good, but we need to give them room to build achievable housing for the rest of us. So you've heard all this, and I'm not running for office or anything. I'm just asking you for help. I keep hearing from people, how can we help? How can we help? Well, testify. And if you need a lesson in that, I'm sure Suzanne Young and all of your group there have gone through that, but we really appreciate it if you would. So the next, I would like to, can you open up the next column? Next sheet, sorry. Okay, so I've got here in front of you what we call the risk and priority. So this is on the capital stack side. So of course, everybody knows development is about design, planning, permitting, construction, and ultimately the finished product. But did you know that the true execution of development, the people who can make it happen, are people who have finance? It's really about financial engineering as to how much profit we can provide to motivate those people to risk millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, wait years and years to deliver homes and finally achieve their profit margin. So I want to share with you, and I know you all know this, but I thought I'd at least share the perspective. This is the first slide, which is what's a capital stack? Capital stack is when we layer in what it costs to develop a project. Who's going to pay for what? Where's that money coming from? So we have the senior debt, right? Which everyone says, oh, interest rates are so cheap. It's 3%, 4%. I don't know. Developers are so greedy. They need to mark it up so much over their cost. Well, senior debt might be cheap. Maybe you can get it. If you're Sanford Car, they probably give you the money for free because the risk is so low. But for most of the projects, senior debt is about 4% to 6%, depending on the risk of the project. Maybe it's 10%. But senior means that it's the first priority. They're the last money to go in and the first money to come out when the projects are sold. Then you have the mezzanine debt, and it's becoming more and more prevalent. We have got the mezzanine debt. The mezzanine debt in rental housing is where the tax credit comes in, where the rental housing trust fund from the conveyance tax goes in. It's the gap, that mezzanine. It is the most expensive debt that is that a developer has to come up with, or prolonged if you're waiting for tax credits to be allocated to your project over years and years of trying. In fact, I think Stanford said in one of the presentations that he did a project where there were 52 people on the call to closing. And that's because that's how many people, how many funders were needed to gap this rental housing project that he brought to life for our community. So for that, the last 10% may be equity, true equity, where you're actually putting in, partnership monies, or, developer puts in their own money. So what's happening in the marketplace lately is that there's no money available for raw land deals. Why? Because it takes so long, because the NIMBYism has gone awry. There's, everyone is worried about the climate change. So everything has to be reviewed all over again. The cost has gone up, skyrocketed. When I see something related to the supply chain, right? You say, oh my God, Panama Canal is stuck, or Suez Canal is stuck and there's a backup. And I'm thinking building construction costs, what's in there? Our steel supply is coming from there. What's coming from that side of the world? Because it affects all of our supply chain. You can't see it more transparently than in construction costs. And of course, when you have this pandemic and everyone has to be 6 feet apart before you can actually start operating a factory, you're producing, 10 times less than what you normally do at peak capacity under the guise of the pandemic And so we're going to be seeing a significant amount of construction cost increase. And then the senior debt, because of the, Wall Street, save the Main Street banks and Wall Street, the whole fiasco of 2008, the elected officials, or our Congress, thinking they were doing a great job, passed these laws that require banks to be so regulated that now in new construction debt, it used to be 75%, but now it's more like 65%, which means you have to gain more of the expensive mezzanine debt or bring in more equity. Now, if you can blow up the number side of this picture, could you blow it up a little bit more, and then take me to the number side and then the 4 boxes. Okay, so I'm so sorry I'm belaboring these kinds of points. I'm sure you all know this, but I just wanted to put some simple pictures. Could you make it? Okay, so 1,000 square feet. The first left box is 1,000 square foot of home. And so everybody knows, right? I mean, it's really a finite number to know what it costs per square foot of construction. People are always asking, what's per square foot of construction? Let's do the rough numbers, quick numbers. And even my son can do that math. 1,000 square foot home, $300 a square foot, $300,000. Now, I highlighted site costs and land costs, because really it's not about the construction of the home. It's about what is it going to take to get your site ready? What kind of environmental regulation, burials, historic, driveway cuts? Will DOT allow you to have a driveway or not? Site conditions. Do you have lava rocks? You need to blow up in dynamite before you can come in. Do you have environmental site conditions? Do you have water tables that are right below your foundation? What's happening, right? So generally, it's about $100,000 in a perfect environment with everything available to site. That's to build roadways, to internal subdivision roadway, without talking about what we say off-site, outside of your site. I remember there was a project that D.R. Horton did in Hunaleva, 11 units. To build 11 units, they had to do an off-site sewer improvement on Kahala Avenue, where they had to participate in the construction cost of that, so that their sewage would flow. Now, instead of the city paying for it, they waited for the next developer to come along. D.R. Horton came and they said, wham, $900,000. You just added $100,000 to those 11 homes, each home. And then we think, well, why are these homes over $1 million? So that's the site cost. And of course, the land cost. If you're in Kalihi, you have a 5,000 square foot lot, you probably can buy a lot for $50 a square foot, maybe, so $250,000. You're in Kahala, now that price might be $750,000. Maybe you're in Kahala, it's $1.5 million for a 10,000 square foot lot. That changes. So the box below, in a single family, right below it, I made it. What if the site cost is 0? What if the land cost is 0, right? Now then the construction cost is, say, 100 units. $30 million is what the construction cost is, because all we have to do is build the homes. Everything else is provided because you can build right to the road. Land was free. Give the land free because, you know, somebody, state or city will give you the land for free and it's in perfect condition. You just need to build a house. That's $30 million. Now let's look at the capital stack. $3 million, remember I told you that's the equity. $4.5 million, that's the mezzanine. And the $22.5 million for the bank. The bank, they might charge you 4% because it's very low risk, single family homes, everybody wants them. But the mezzanine, their money goes out before, remember? So the first money goes in is that the equity has to pay the $3 million, every penny. Then the mezzanine comes in with 4.5. Then the bank comes in. By the time the bank comes in, you may have pre-sold the units. You know, people are ready to come in and we've already built the roadways and infrastructure. Maybe all the plans and permits have been permitted. There's no risk. That's when they come in. Then they're the first to go out when the homes sell. So they're paid up. It didn't cost a lot, but that's 4%. Now this is for 1 year, right? Say you built everything in 1 year. That is going to be $23,000. So we're looking at 4% return for them, 15% for the mezzanine return, and the equity, the people who have to wait till the last home is sold before they get their money back and their profit back, the requirement may be 25%. I'm just using some rough numbers here. That means before the first profit of that project, it costs $23,000 added to whatever the cost is for just 1 year. But you know that the permits are not done in 1 year. You know the pre-sale is not done in 1 year. You know the construction can't be done in 1 year. So let's use 3 years, which is the most perfect surrounding where you don't have to go through a resort. Now, if I added 20 years, that's a different number, right? My Hawaii Kai project, it cost us, I actually calculated our cost to carry without the profit. This is before the equity return profit, $114,000. So in this scenario where land is free, and site work is free, you have to make at least $69,000 of profit on that $300,000 of income for free land, you know, which is supposed to be really, if you're free, that, and so if it's not free land and you're building in Kalihi at $50 a square foot, you have to make $800,000, $650,000 for the land plus the site work plus the construction plus the cost of all of these carry for a 3-year project, which is very, very fast in Hawaii, in Honolulu. You have to add $151,000 to it. That's an $800,000 house. You wonder why. And yet, this is before you add the education fee, before they require you to, I don't know, whatever sewer lines that may need to be improved. They say, well, you can wait 20 years before we allocate a budget, or we've been waiting for a developer to come in, so you need to pay for that interchange, or that light, or the fire hydrant, or widening. Like Tracy was talking about widening, she dedicated, I don't know how many tens of acres of land for the widening of Farrington Highway. Farrington Highway has needed widening for 10 years before their project ever started. And yet their home buyers are required to pay for it. That is not right. Why should the home buyers, and not the rest of the county of Honolulu and the state of Hawaii, pay for housing that we all say we need? I know your answers are, we shouldn't, but that's what's happened. And that is why homes cost so much. So what I ask of you when you say, what can we do to help? Now don't use these numbers, it's all junky numbers, okay? I mean, I'm just making it up, but it's fairly similar from what can be done. It's just to show you what we need is help. And the first table that I talked about, the resolution, is a very good start. I know that Harry and I and Sanford and Tracy, we work on these working groups that David puts together, invites us to. I'm not a member of LERF because I don't own a lot of land. I have to go and acquire and bid and compete against everybody. But we participate, we spend our time trying to, in hopes that we can enlighten people to understand that it's not greed. It is just a matter of building widgets. And that economics of building those widgets have to be right to motivate, incentivize to building more housing that our community needs. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Hey, Dave, are you ready to do question and answer? And everybody, it is 11:32, but as long as everybody's willing, and I think that this session has been amazing, we would love to stay on and continue with the Q&A. Is that good with you, Dave? I'm waiting for him to unmute. And if not, I will just get started if you guys don't mind. So Tracy, there was a question, and this is for all panelists. Our members love the presentations that you have been sharing, and if we can just get your agreement that we can share the presentations and the video with our members, but it is also our intent, we are recording this session, that we will share this valuable presentation with our council members and mayor and DPP. So if you all want to just give a thumbs up. David, you're on.
Jen, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, you know, Christine Camp for governor. All right. Before we start the Q&A, and Jennifer, you can do the Q&A if you want. Just want to cover a couple of issues that Christine might have brought up. One is the third-party review. And third-party review, it does cost a lot, but there's a program at the city and county where that's available for professional companies with architects, engineers, and planners, and they will review your plans with you and do a checklist and send it to the city saying that they have checked it for consistency with the city ordinances. And these third-party reviewers have to take an examination given by the city and be certified by the city. They do not take the place of city employees. A city employee will still have to review that document, but it's in the correct form and everything's in the proper order, so it's much easier and more efficient for the city officials to review. I know about it because when I was corporation counsel, that was the last thing I did before I left office, do the ordinance for the third-party review. The other issue that Christine talked about, with the help of everybody on this conference call, all of the developers on this conference call, we were able to, in the last legislation, Bill 2 at the city, do a moratorium on the 40-foot setback in TOD areas. When we asked the city, what is the reason for the 40-foot setback? Because we have award-winning projects with 10 feet and 15-foot setbacks. They told us that they never enforced the 40-foot setback. The reason why it's there is they use it as leverage on developers to get other benefits for the city. So what they do is they say, okay, you have a 40-foot setback mandate, but we'll reduce it if you do X, Y, and Z for us. Okay, so we're able to get a moratorium on that. Okay, so Jen, we can open up for questions. You can ask the questions, and any of the panel that can answer, can answer.
Okay, so I have, I'm filling in, this is Suzanne for Jen. She had another session that she had to go to. So Stanford, we do have a question about the CAM Drive-In development. It used to be called Live, Work, Play IAEA. Estimate on the start date and the name. Stanford, that question was for you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I was on mute. We're looking at a 2-year start date, and we are still in discussions and vetting the appropriate name based on the genealogy. We know the area is Pearl City, but the proper Ahupua'a is Kala'au. So we are in discussions with the kapunas of the neighborhood to come up with the appropriate name, as well as to celebrate the molelos of the past there.
That's awesome. I think
Yes.
that's we want to make sure that the community welcomes these projects. Let's see, another question I have. This is for Tracy. Is there a target in megawatts for renewable energy generation for the entire project as a whole that HECO is planning to incorporate?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. That is a very good question, and I probably meant directly for HECO. What I will tell you is we've been partnering with HECO and having monthly meetings before we started building at Ho'opili, so that we can be well coordinated with their infrastructure that needs to go in to feed Ho'opili. And they've done a great job as a partner to keep up and stay in front of our development so that we can eventually power up our homes. They are at the PUC right now for their approval of their first substation within Ho'opili. So in port that can provide it to that, we'll be supporting new homes at Ho'opili.
Excellent. Let's see. So the question for Christine, and I think for everybody, is as realtors, what role can we play to expedite the process to get permits approved? I think that Christine, you laid out some really key steps that we can look at. And just for everybody's benefit, our City Affairs Committee will be working directly with Dave and our developers on testimony, being able to, whenever the developers need our support for policy issues, as well as resolutions and policy, all of that. That is the goal of our City Affairs Committee. And many of you have raised some really great questions. And if any of you are interested in joining our City Affairs Committee, by all means, we'd love to have you. Dave, do you have any, let's see, what other questions? This is a general question for everybody. With 48% of land being in conservation, 47% in ag, which area would be the quickest to turn into more urban or rural land for development? And is that even possible? Dave, you're mute. Go ahead, Stanford.
So in 2016, the legislature asked us, a bunch of us, to create an action team for affordable housing. So we published in 2018 an inventory of lands. This is done statewide of both county and state land. It's called the 10-year plan that was published. It was led by the Office of State Planning. I believe you go to Office of State Planning's website, you'll be able to find the 10-year plan. So there was a consolidation of county and state lands and categorized by tier 1, 2, and 3. Tier 1 being within the urban zoning, as well as within or nearby infrastructure. So the emphasis on Oahu was along the rail corridor, but we have an abundance of public lands that could be developed for housing. And we've got legislation in this session whereby the state could enter into 99-year leases for the development of both for sale and rental housing. So we're looking at these different options as an avenue to develop more inventory, both in for sale as well as rentals. So that there's a resource there that has been done. We spent 2 years putting this together. We collaborated with all 4 counties. So you've got this study on the shelf. What we need to do is take this resource and use it.
I think that's excellent. That's excellent. And we will also share the information with our state association as well, because it will cover everybody. Right now, we're just here for Honolulu, but I think that's encouraging. That's encouraging. Harry, I see that you have your hand raised. Go ahead and unmute and go ahead and contribute.
Yeah, to build on what Stanford had to say was that trying to address and change the state law and the Constitution to eliminate the land use commission or something is probably a moot point. I think the best thing to do is, to his point, is that there's a lot of land already urbanized, is to focus on developing on those lands. And the city and state sit on a bunch of lands. It's exploring the use of school sites. Can you put teacher housing on school sites? Increasing density. That's what part of the TOD policies are about. But there's another aspect is it's not a simple permitting issue. It's more the whole chain of activities necessary to get housing. And Christine made the point that if you can turn something from a 5 or 10 year process to a three-year process, there's lots of opportunities to increase the housing. One of the things we did from a planning perspective for our master plan community, and Horton did the similar thing, is we kind of changed or flipped over our density concepts. Instead of the typical 10,000 square foot lot that we saw back in the 60s and 70s, we went to smaller and smaller lots. We've gone to more attached units. We're going to mid-rise buildings, even in the suburban areas. So it's all those tools to add to the density to be able to increase the production without converting lands, conservation lands or ag lands, to urban zoned areas. So I think that's where your first priority, and that's what Stafford mentioned, that we went and researched those lands within the urban areas that are already there that have utilities. Third thing is government needs to address providing infrastructure.
Can I ask, Harry, on the infrastructure, is that controlled by the state? So it would be state legislature, or regarding infrastructure, some of that could also be done at the county level?
It could be done at all levels. You have to think of highways. You have federal, state, and county on the roadways. Those are those issues. Sewer is a quasi-city function. Drainage is under federal, state, and county regulations. So it is kind of across the board. However, what government has the ability to do that the private sector does not is to be able to float bonds at a favorable rates, where you could actually finance it under a government bond and then pay it back over a period of 30 years. When the private sector does it, generally we have to go out and borrow the money up front and pay for it up front, and then have to cover the interest for 5, 10, or 20 years. And that, just as Christine pointed out, if you're doing that every year, it's going to add to the total cost. So that's where government can help, is if they can do the financing side of it.
Excellent. Dave, do you have any questions for our panel members?
Suzanne, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Christine.
Or maybe more of a comment following what Harry said about financing infrastructure. We talk about where we could have the realtors help us also is looking at, again, you can build housing, but sometimes when you're trying to build to a certain price that people want to afford, then you've got to take away from that mezzanine cost or the equity cost, which means that we would like to see the state participate in financing the risk capital for housing. Then the pressure to generate a higher return is lessened. And so what's happening is, as the projects get bigger, right, because you have these high rises, the people who can participate in that realm is minimal. What you see more and more national companies who might not have the deep-rooted ties to Hawaii, like some of us at this table have. They may not have that influence, or even the profits that is made may not be spent on the community as much as we would like if the owners themselves live in Hawaii. You have this big presence like Stanford, Harry, D.R. Horton, they're very embedded. But if you have these one-time developers that are coming because they have the capital to risk because the projects are becoming bigger and bigger along the TOD, you're going to lose the opportunity to control those pricing. What we need to do as a community is not only have funding mechanisms for infrastructure to take away the risk away from project specific, because it is for the benefit of the whole of the community. Find financing mechanisms. I don't mean by loans, but a lot of loans. You're the last in, first out. A lot of loans available. What we need is that risk capital. If the state can provide more and more risk capital, not just for rental housing, but for housing for sale, so that the first-time home buyers have an opportunity to build wealth here in Hawaii. Those recent college graduates who found their jobs, they're getting their dream jobs, only to find out that they're not qualified because they make too much money. We need that financing mechanism to help price it for them.
Let me chime in here, and this was done before for those of you that aren't aware. Back under the Waihe administration and the creation of HFDC under the Waihe administration, which is where they did a friendly condemnation with Campbell Estate and master planned the villages of Kapolei, a whole mixed use, mixed income master planned community of 580 acres. Harry did the first village out there. We did the 2 villages out of a total of 8 villages. But this initiative was also undertaken on the Big Island, Laiapua, as well as Le'ali'i in Lahaina, Maui, only to find out later that both Le'ali'i and Laiapua were ceded lands. So that became part of the resolution with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands with respect to the funds that they were owed. So it's been done before. It was a model. You know, kudos to Waihe and his administration, and the completion of it was done under the Cayetano administration with the completion of villages 6, 7, and 8.
Great information. I don't know if we have Dean Uchida here, but there has been a question about where can you find the third-party reviewers? Does anyone know?
Yeah, so we have been using Polycana permits since the inception of the third-party review, and they send their staff to get to take classes to keep up with the codes. They get tested. So they're very well qualified. They're part of the discussions when there is an adoption of code. Last year, under the council was considering Bill 50. David was in the room with Polycana and myself. We had a 2-hour debate on some of the issues of the codes that were being adopted. So Mayor Caldwell decided to allow it to become law without his signature, because we had a lot of merits to the arguments of how this is going to be negatively, or the impact was not worth the cost benefit. However, this prompted us to start looking at changes in how the state building code council members are appointed. And so we continue this effort. Suzanne, the whole board of realtors really want to get involved and help the development community. It takes a village. You know, we've got many different organizations: Land Use Research Foundation, Building Industry Association, the Honolulu Board of Realtors. We need to collaborate more and open the lines of communication, because it does take a village. Many helping hands will make the workload lighter. In many cases, as Christine had spoke to, towards Bill 2, we're spending a lot of time and energy playing defense, trying to stop policy proposals that would be detrimental to the feasibility of development. So this is a healthy conversation.
We agree wholeheartedly with you. I think Bill 2 was the parking one. So I have shared with our members, and I share with the 200 members who are on with us today, when we send out a survey for your input, it's really important for you to respond, because as you can see, the information that you can share with us about what your clients, your buyers and sellers are dealing with, That information is then put into the survey results that then get shared with LERF, with the developers, and ultimately with the council members and help shape policy. So when we ask, whether it's to provide testimony or information, please make sure that you respond. I will share with you that we have been meeting with the new council members as well as the new administration. We are hopeful because of the conversations seem to indicate that they are they care about our community. They care about helping to solve the affordable housing problem, or at least do some good work related to it. So we're encouraged. And I think, as you say, Stanford, this meeting here, right here today, with our our organization, LERF, and all of you as the developer community is a great step in the right direction to, as you said, many hands working together. I think we all care. Our realtors are suffering out there, especially if they're representing first-time home buyers. I spoke with a realtor yesterday whose client, first-time home buyer, submitted offers 15 different times, 15 different properties, but they stayed in the game. The realtor was right there with them, and finally the offer got accepted. So we are definitely all focused on the same results, which helps our island community and our working families. Let's see. Dave, do you have any other questions? Let's see. What I'm hearing from everybody is a lot of thanks to all of you for being here with us and sharing the information. Dave, can we ask the panelists for some final comments or questions if you have? Go for it, Dave. Unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, will all the panelists give their last statements, I guess, in the order that you came up? So, first would be probably Tracy.
Yes.
You.
Tracy, mute.
All
Unmute.
right, there we go. Thank you, HBR, Suzanne and Dave, and my fellow panelists. Appreciate the time. If I could leave just a couple of last thoughts as baseline, baseline principles and takeaways is one, that housing needs to be a priority, and that getting the housing is actually the benefit that we are all going to see. And if we start messaging that, hopefully we'll change the dialogue, because right now, as Christine and Stanford and Harry mentioned, when we go in for approvals and we need exemptions, or we need certain types of specific approvals, while we'll get the approvals, we'll always get, well, what else are you gonna do to benefit the public, right? I'm representing the public, I need to give back to the public. And all it does is offset cost savings. And so really we have to message that the benefit to the public is just actually getting more housing. And we need to commit to that, and we need to own it, and we need to collaborate and work together to continue educating decision makers and the community, because it is going to take a village. We need to build housing. It needs to be built in all communities, we can't say we need housing, but not in my neighborhood. It's just not going to work anymore. So thank you very much. I look forward to working with all of you.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you, Tracy. I have to echo Tracy, is that there has to be a commitment for housing, and housing at all price points. Don't focus on just for the homeless or just for the affordable. It's at all price points. And you know what? Our home buyers are a whole range of local people. Rather they're buying a $300,000 home or $1 million home, and they're still local buyers. I've looked at all the homes we've sold here to date in Coral Ridge. It's about 100 because we just started. all 100%, 99%, all but one is a local person. They're all owner occupants. The one person was from California, relocating to Hawaii for a job, and they were already into the community. So we're building for Hawaii people. We need to have that as the focus. And every time there's a hearing, every time there's a question, we need to look at the benefit is housing for our people. It generates tax revenues, it does all the good things, but you know what? They need a home to live in. And we're not going to solve the migration of our youngest and brightest if they can't buy a home and live here. I've lost most of my family to the mainland because they couldn't afford to live here. And I think in this, so it's very personal to me. So that's my message, echoing Tracy and everybody else. Yeah, permitting, processing and all that. If you say housing is the priority, then it's a lot easier to make the decisions. Aloha, and thank you to HBR for being involved, and continue to work with and interact with Dave and the other organizations who are working towards the same end, building homes for Hawaii's people.
Thanks, Harry.
Thanks, Harry. To Honolulu Board of Realtors, thank you very much for having us. I'm honored to be here with my fellow panelists, and believe me, we collaborate a lot. We're friendly competitors, but we're united on the front as far as our mission to develop housing for our community. We've been talking about this for decades. It's been a priority, as Harry shared with you, the article from 1969, over 50 years ago. It's still a problem. It's reflected in the brain drain that we've seen. In fact, Hawaii has seen a net out-migration of residents that have moved away, probably most definitely attributable to the loss of any chance of being able to buy a home here. We will continue to work with the policymakers. I'm really encouraged with this new mayor's administration, as well as the council members. There's a priority and emphasis to look at peeling back the onion on regulation and reviews, and I hope to see some measurable outcomes in the near future. So thank you very much.
Well said, all of you. I don't know how much more I can add, but I want to just leave you with the word should be YIMBYism, not NIMBYism, right? I mean, I didn't make this up. It's yes in my yard, in my backyard. Yes, in my backyard. Why? Because our affordable housing crisis, or housing crisis for that matter, was created not by the lack of land, because that's the result of policies. It's policy driven. The reason where we are today versus when we compare ourselves to 1960s and 70s and 80s before the Land Use Commission was created and all these different things, right, is it's policy. So we have to affect change at the policy level. That is where we can affect change. We can't create more land, but we can certainly affect change. So it's policy, and yet the word should be yes in my backyard. And when we think about your neighbors having a say in what you can do, multiply that by every neighborhood, you'll result in the same result here, which is you get to build nothing, because it's going to affect somebody in somebody's backyard. So we have to think of it in a greater good. If we really want this community, we really love Hawaii, and we want to make it better, we really have to think about yes in my backyard. Thank you.
Dave, your final thoughts? Let's see, where is he?
Hi, hi. Sorry, I've been having all these technical difficulties, but I'd like to thank all the panelists, an all-star cast. I'd like to thank the Honolulu Board of Realtors, and we believe that this is the start of strong dialogue between our groups, great partnership, and great advocacy to build more housing in Honolulu. So thank you very much.
Thank you. You know, on behalf of all of our 6,500 members and our board of directors and our city affairs committee, we want to thank you all for coming together for this wonderful session. And I agree with you, Dave. This is the start of our groups working together, and I am hopeful. I understand that it will take a little while to get housing built, but it's going to take a lot longer if we don't change our policies and see improvement. So I'm encouraged by the new director at DPP, the new administration at Honolulu Hale and the city council. And so working together, all we can do is make it better for our local families. So thank you to each and every one of you for your talent and expertise and the hard work that you're doing to build housing. And we will stay in touch and we will work this through together. So aloha, happy Aloha Friday, everybody.
Aloha.
Aloha, thank you.
Aloha.
Aloha.